Here at the Refugee Center in DevBlock, we offer two key programs. First, our academic integration program. After we initially started the center, we realized that there's a lack of English education here in Quebec, mostly English proficiency examination training. And what I mean by that is IELTS or TOEFL training. These are exams that newcomers, especially refugees or protected persons, new migrants, need in order to be admitted into university. We saw from the statistics that Quebec was kind of lagging behind the other provinces as far as newcomers going into university, getting higher education, or trying to equalize what they've already had when they came. So we started our IELTS classes. Basically, our first semester, we had maybe 12 students because we were new. But around our third semester, we had 250 people sign up just because there was a high demand. And from that program alone, we were able to admit, on average, 150 newcomers/refugees into university every year. We have 3 admission cycles, so we go the fall semester, winter semester, and the summer semester. For academic integration program, our short-term outcomes are focused more towards educating them on IELTS and them writing the IELTS exam. Our kind of medium to long-term outcomes are for them to apply to university, go back to university, and then long-term outcomes, graduate, find a job, or go into the field of academia. Because Canada is kind of this unique country where they really value Canadian education, right? Even Americans who graduate out of like these crazy well-known schools have a tough time here in Canada. So it's really important for us to get them to do this right away. Our second program is our economic integration program. That's one of also the kind of big elephant in the room a lot of organizations kind of struggle to tackle. During our study, we found that specifically in the Montreal area, the tech industry is a growing industry. There are more jobs now than there are individuals who are qualified to fill them in Montreal. So we're talking about programming jobs, design jobs, Adobe jobs. Those kind of really niche but unique skill sets that can be taught outside of the university or outside of college. So we started a DevBlock, and DevBlock was started late 2016. And the idea was to create basically a technology boot camp and technology classes, programming classes, coding classes, where they can gain enough skills to build a portfolio to apply to these jobs. And these classes were taught by industry leaders. So for example, we've had teachers come from Morgan Stanley, we've had teachers come from Shopify, we've had teachers come from Google, Microsoft. All people that were employed in these big industry companies teach these classes, things such as web development, Python, data sciences, mobile development. We're introducing next semester a VR class, like virtual reality, because that's something that we're seeing here in Montreal in the gaming industry that's in demand. There doesn't exist anything like this for newcomers and refugees and new migrants, but it exists for just everyday Canadians, right? So I'm sure everyone's heard of technology boot camps, right? There's so many throughout the country. So that's why we're like, it's already a proven model, right? And they exist because they're trying to fill this huge gap that exists in Canada right now of skilled labor in this industry. So why not funnel the individuals that we have into that sector as well? We did it in a way where the newcomers can also expand their social network. So how do we go about doing that? We have something called the 70-30 split. So basically 70% of the class is newcomers, migrants, refugees, and 30% of the class is locals, because these are skills that everyone's trying to attain, right? And from that alone, they were able to kind of organically create new friendships, create a new network, socially expand who they know. And that helps because that's how you get referrals to jobs. That's how you get internships. That's how kind of everything, all the blocks kind of building a financial stability in Canada starts. So yes, we've been doing that now ever since late 2016. It was like we do it maybe about 3 times a year in about 8-week intervals. We're quite content with the results. We achieve around every time after every cohort, so every 8 weeks, we achieve above 80% kind of placement rate with that. One of the key performance indicators for our economic integration programming at DevBlock is their portfolios. So After they're done, how proficient are their portfolios in web development, for example? How many websites did they build? What platforms did they use? What languages did they use? Are they able to showcase that in a manner that's accurate, that would represent how they would work in the industry? So those are the kind of key performance indicators we're looking for our short-term goals. For our long-term goals, obviously, are they getting a career out of this? We're the only ones in the Quebec region that are doing what we're doing in both our programs, right? As an NGO. Private industry, already does this. They have that proof of concept for us. There are private IELTS classes in Quebec, but if you're willing to dish out $1,500, right? And then they're full and they're profitable because it's a huge need, right? But what we're doing is that we're taking the kind of capitalistic idea out of it, right? We see that it's an essential need. And why is it essential need? Because the number one thing newcomers need to do is kind of ground themselves in the community that they're at. And education is such a crucial component to Canadian society, especially Canadian education, right? As far as the economic integration programming, it's unique because it works in the private sector, right? So these private companies who do these boot camps and do these technology boot camps are doing quite successfully and are charging, upwards of $12,000 for the same curriculum that we're teaching. And they're doing so because they see that it's a huge demand and they have extraordinarily high job placement rates. So why not do that for our clientele, like our target market? It would be very low cost, because what we found is that industry is actually looking to participate in this as much as possible, because it's a way for them to secure talent at a very low cost, right? They'd be willing to have their employees come teach this kind of stuff as part of their own social corporate responsibility programming, because the return that they would get as far as trained individuals, skilled laborers, is huge. One of the glaring differential factors that are offered in both our academic integration programming and our economic integration programming is that we involve the Canadian public, right? So our classes are 70-30, right? No one does this. People always offer their services exclusively to a particular clientele, whereas in us, we're trying to mesh the community together by giving them skills that we think are needed by everyone, right? There's the basic stuff, like, okay, let's take them to a museum, let's take them to a park, let's have these barbecues, let's do all these different things. But while this is all nice and dandy, right, how is a visit to a museum going to get them a referral to a job, right? Or help educate them, like, oh, I need somebody to co-sign my rental application, or I need someone to look after my kid while I go do this, right? That's what a good social network is. It's a support system. And it's a way for you to learn about the society you're in without being taught it in a classroom. So for us, it was the best way to kind of do that organically is to put them together, let them face these struggles together, right? That would only add to kind of the cohesiveness of the community that we're trying to create. For academic integration programming, one of the things that we do is we're data hoarders. So we gather data on everything, right? So our academic consultations are all recorded online. We know exactly what's being asked of us. We know if we met those needs. We know exactly how many study permits we do. We know exactly how many work permits we do. We know how many cases we take on. We know how many people we've helped admit to university. We know how many applications we've submitted in, right? So those are very important metrics to know if what we're doing is correct. We've also set in a lot of things that are industry standards. So after the end of every semester, we do a quick survey with all the students to see if if they're comfortable with the teacher, if they're comfortable with the curriculum. We do placement tests, so one at the beginning, one at the end, so we know if they actually increased as far as their capacity and their knowledge moving forward. We do interviews maybe twice a year. Just because there's so many cohorts, it wouldn't make sense for us to do interviews every single time, but they're usually sampled at different stages. We'll also look for, we do outcomes testing. So after our follow-ups, we see how many of them were admitted to university, how many of them were not, what's the average score after every cohort. If a score is kind of an anomaly, we kind of will look into that. I would say with about the 150 that get admitted every year, we're about a 75% efficiency rate. So I would say 25% of them have to redo the IELTS class. And if you were to count admissions into like colleges or going to like kind of like what we say blue collar type of industries, you could bump that up to about 83% last I checked. Those are pretty good numbers for us. I mean, those are phenomenal numbers for us. And it's not like the individuals who don't get in never get in. They usually just have to have a bit more attentive training. They just have to redo the class, or maybe we suggest they do a higher level class or have like tutoring at a particular part in which they didn't succeed on. And we do follow up with individuals who don't go in, just to see where our shortcomings are. As far as the economic integration programming, we definitely do the same thing. So we see what type of knowledge they came into the class and what type of knowledge they come out of the class. We do mock interviews. We have a system in place where we tell them how to apply to jobs, how to network. We have an Excel sheet system where they track all the jobs that they've applied to and how many callbacks they get. And we also measure job placements. So we follow up with them through emails, through the one-on-one consultations, because it's a smaller focus group, right? So it's a control group of 10 to 15 individuals per module. So we can do that. Our testing, we focus a lot on interviews because the problems were ranging way too much for us to just do a simple survey, and they're more unique problems, right? For our tech classes, we realized after our first cohort that a lot of students had a lot of questions outside of class time, because the homework requires a lot of what we call bug fixing. So they would build something and have a lot of problems to fix those bugs. So we needed 24-hour pretty much support online. So with all the teachers that we come in, we created a Slack channel that all the students are in on their mobile app, and they can share their code, and the teacher would give feedback and say, if you want to fix this problem, you have to do this and that, or they would suggest a pathway to them, come up with their own solution. So yes, of course, we've used different assessments to modify our programming in both our academic integration programming and our economic integration programming. For example, why we do our classes at night or in the evenings. At the beginning, we had them during the day and we had them during at night, and we wanted to see which ones would be more popular. The day ones were more popular, but halfway through, most of the students dropped out, and we were probing why. All of them like, okay, this guy got a job. So usually when they come and they're new, they don't have anything in their schedules, but as life progresses, usually the things or the commitments that come up in your life usually are scheduled during the work hours, right? So then our evening classes had a stronger commitment level. Less people missed classes, less people dropped out. We definitely believe that what we're doing and what we're teaching in both our programming, the economic integration program and academic integration program, can be transferred kind of anywhere within Canada, whether it be a rural area in the north or whether it be in a metropolis city kind of like Montreal. Why we believe that is because the skills we are teaching can be used anywhere, right? Anyone can program and code from a laptop anywhere in Canada. Granted, Montreal definitely has more tech jobs than other areas, but the tech skills that we're teaching them, not necessarily just for jobs, they exist for you to be an entrepreneur as well. And the rural areas in Canada, I think, will only benefit economically from this type of support, because it encourages economic growth. An ability for newcomers to start their own businesses will only create jobs, especially if they're successful and well marketed and well designed, and they have the right skill set to do so. Because we've kind of hit a niche and it's been successful, what we're looking for economic integration programming is kind of partnering up with industry so they can do their own training for particular fields for newcomers and refugees. So for example, we're in talks with different banking industries where they have to do, usually when they hire people, they spend at least they told us 3 months training individuals, right? in their platforms and what their regulations are and what they do and all that kind of stuff. So if we can partner with them so they can do that training here, right? Not only will that save them costs, it will help them get a better criteria of individuals where they can pick and hire. And that's not just in the banking industry. We've seen that also in like the aerospace engineering industry. We've seen that in a lot of communications and marketing industries, right? Where usually, yeah, they look for fresh grads, but they end up training them anyways. Why not have that training here, see how that goes, and at least you'll be saving costs and time, and these individuals can enter the workforce already kind of pre-trained in a lot of stuff, and it would reduce your costs. Our ultimate goal is to have our programming replicated by the official government outlets. That's what we really want to see being done, because then we'll know there's sustainability there that's guaranteed forever. If the Quebec government comes in and says, hey, this is a really good program, we're going to put it as part of our immigration programming and our integration and resettlement services, then we know we've solved a problem. When we always talk about resettlement practices and integration, we have to understand that it takes two to tango, right? Especially with the refugee populations that are coming in. The society itself has to be willing to let them integrate, Yes, there's the owner's responsibility on the refugees, and yes, there's the owner's responsibility on newcomers, but that same owner's responsibility is on us, right? So this is why it's really important for NGOs and community organizations such as ourselves to fill in that gap and to show a proof of concept. And we hope that by doing this and by doing our 70-30 split and by opening up our programming to everyone, is to show everyone that we're kind of in the same boat. We're all trying to get somewhere, and we're all trying to better society, and we're all trying to seek financial stability. And it's much easier done if we do it together than if we do it in a way where we're polarized.